He paid me $10,000 just to wear his ring and lie to his whole family. I needed the money more than I needed my pride. He needed a fake fiancé to save everything he'd built. Neither of us planned on falling in love. But 3 months later, I wasn't pretending anymore, and neither was he. If you want to see how far a lie can travel before it turns into something real, stay with me, because this story still gives me chills every time I tell it. My name is Nadia, and I want to start by telling you that 3 months ago, my life was falling apart in slow motion. I lost my job on a Tuesday over something that wasn't even my fault. My landlord slid an eviction notice under my door on a Thursday. And by Friday, I was standing outside a coffee shop in the pouring rain, holding a bag of groceries I couldn't really afford, trying to figure out how I was going to keep the lights on for me and my mother. She'd been sick for almost a year by then, and every time I thought I had a plan, another bill would show up and knock the wind right out of me. I remember standing there getting soaked, watching people rush past me with their umbrellas, and thinking that maybe this was just going to be my life now. Struggling, always one step behind. That's when a black car slowed down beside me and the window rolled down. "You're soaked," the man inside said. "Get in before you catch a cold." I looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "I don't get into cars with strangers," I told him, and I meant it. He just smiled, this small, tired smile, like he wasn't used to people saying no to him. "Elijah Cole," he said, like that was supposed to mean something. And it did. Everybody in that city knew the Cole name. His family basically owned half of it, the buildings, the hotels, even the hospital where my mother was getting treated. I told him I knew exactly who he was, and that's exactly why I wasn't getting in his car. He laughed, actually laughed, and told me to suit myself, and then he drove off into the rain. I didn't think I'd ever see that man again in my life. I was wrong about that, and honestly, I was wrong about a lot of things back then. A week later, I was working a shift at the diner I couldn't afford to lose, and a woman in a sharp gray suit walked in like she owned the place. She said Mr. Cole wanted to speak with me. I asked her about what, and she just said he'd explain, and something in her voice told me this wasn't a request I could really say no to. So that evening, I found myself sitting across from Elijah Cole in an office that was bigger than my entire apartment, with windows that looked out over the whole city like it belonged to him. And in a way, I guess it did. He didn't waste any time with small talk. He told me straight out that he needed a fiancée, a fake one. I almost laughed in his face. I asked him to repeat himself because surely I hadn't heard him right, but he just kept going, calm as anything, like he was talking about a business merger instead of a human being's life. He said his grandmother controlled the family company until he got married, and she'd given him 6 months to find someone or she'd hand everything over to his cousin instead. He said he didn't have time to fall in love the real way, and he needed someone to play the part for a while. I asked him why on earth I would agree to something like that, and that's when he told me he'd already looked into my situation. My mother's medical bills, my rent. He offered me $20,000 up front and another $20,000 once it was all over. I sat there in complete silence because $40,000 could change my mother's life. It could change mine too. But I had one condition before I said yes. No lies that hurt innocent people. That was my only rule, and I made him promise me to my face. He agreed without even blinking. I should have known right then that a promise made that easily could be broken just as easily too. The first time I met his grandmother, a woman named Corrine, she looked at me like I was something she wanted to scrape off the bottom of her shoe. She asked where we met, and before I could even open my mouth, Elijah answered smoothly, some story about a charity gala the year before. "How romantic," Corrine said, in a tone that told me she didn't believe a single word of it. Later that night, I was hiding out on the balcony trying to catch my breath, and Elijah found me there. He told me I'd done good in there, and I told him his grandmother hated me. He said she hated everyone at first, and to give it time. I reminded him this whole thing was supposed to end in 6 months anyway, so what did it matter? He got quiet after that, and I didn't understand why. Not then, anyway. Over the next few weeks, something started shifting between us that neither of us had planned for. We were supposed to be pretending in public and going our separate ways behind closed doors, but somewhere along the way, the pretending started spilling over into something that felt a lot more real. He learned that I take my coffee black with way too much sugar. I learned that he grew up surrounded by nannies and housekeepers instead of actual parents, and that all his money in the world never once made him feel like he truly belonged anywhere. One night he told me I was the only person who talked to him like he was just a regular man, not a Cole, not a name on a building. I reminded him he wasn't a regular man, he was the man paying me $40,000 to stand beside him. He asked me if that's really what it still felt like to me. I didn't answer him because honestly it hadn't felt like that in weeks, and we both knew it. That was the night he kissed me, not for his grandmother watching from across the room, not for any cameras or any deal we'd signed. Just for us in the quiet when nobody else was looking. I told him that wasn't part of the arrangement. He told me he didn't care about the arrangement anymore. And God help me in that moment, neither did I. Everything was moving so fast and feeling so good that I should have known better than to let my guard down completely. There was a woman named Selena who used to date Elijah before I ever came into the picture, and she cornered me one night at a company dinner with a look on her face that made my stomach drop before she even said a word. She told me she knew my little secret, the fake fiancé, the money. She said she had bank records to prove every bit of it and she wanted me to walk away quietly or she'd take everything straight to Kareen. I didn't sleep at all that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, running through every possible way this could go wrong, and somewhere underneath all that fear, I realized something that scared me even more. I wasn't scared of losing the money anymore. I was scared of losing him. 2 nights later, Kareen called a family dinner, and I felt something was wrong the moment I walked through the door. The whole room had that heavy kind of silence that tells you a storm is coming before it even starts. And then Selena stood up in front of everyone, waving papers in the air, announcing to the whole room that I was a fraud, that Elijah was paying me to be there, that none of it was real. The room went completely silent, and every single eye turned to Elijah, waiting for him to say something. And I watched him hesitate. Just for a second, but I saw it, and it broke something inside me that I didn't know could still break. It's complicated, he finally said, and out of everything he could have said in that moment, complicated was the word he chose. He admitted it started as an arrangement, but he said his feelings for me had become real weeks ago. I told him he should have told me the truth before I had to find out like this, in front of his entire family, standing there like I was some kind of criminal. I took the ring off my finger, set it down on that long polished table and told him goodbye. And then I walked out, past his grandmother, past Selena's smug little smile, and I didn't look back once, even though every part of me wanted to. I went home to my mother that night and cried harder than I had in years. I told her he lied to me, that he let his whole family believe I was some kind of villain, and that I never wanted to see his face again. My mother held my hand the way she always does when I'm falling apart, and she told me to judge him by what he does next, not by one bad moment under pressure. I didn't want to hear that. I wanted to stay angry because anger felt a lot safer than heartbreak. A few days passed, and then his assistant, a man named Owen, showed up at my door holding a thick folder. He said Elijah asked him to bring it to me before doing anything else. Inside were bank records, page after page of them, showing that Selena had secretly been funding a rival company, working for months to steal everything out from under Elijah, and she'd used our fake engagement as the perfect distraction the whole time. Owen told me Elijah didn't know any of this when he hesitated at that dinner table. He was trying to figure out how to protect the company from collapsing while also figuring out how to fix things with me, and in that split second, under all that pressure, he chose wrong. But Owen looked me right in the eye and told me something I still think about. He said Elijah never stopped choosing me. He just made one mistake in a moment he wasn't prepared for. A couple of days after that, Elijah showed up at the diner where I used to work. No assistants trailing behind him this time, no cameras, no family watching. Just him standing there in the same spot where a woman in a gray suit had once come looking for me. Except this time it was him, alone, looking more nervous than I had ever seen him look. He said he was wrong to hesitate, that he would regret that moment for the rest of his life, but he wanted me to know he had never once lied about how he felt about me. I crossed my arms and told him he let them call me a fraud in front of his whole family. He said he knew, and he was asking for the chance to never let that happen again. I told him to prove it because words are cheap when your heart has already been broken once. He didn't argue with me. He just handed me another folder, and when I opened it, I found every single one of my mother's medical bills, all of them, paid in full, quietly, weeks before Selena had ever shown up waving her papers around. He told me he'd done that before any of the drama started because he meant every promise he ever made me, even the ones he never said out loud. And that's when I finally understood something about him that I don't think I let myself see before. He wasn't perfect. He'd made a mistake in front of people who mattered to him, and it had cost him more than he probably realized in that moment. But everything underneath that mistake was real. The way he looked at me, the way he showed up quietly without needing credit for it. That was real. I told him I didn't need a fake fiancé anymore. He stepped closer and told me I was right, I didn't, because he was asking me for real this time. No contract, no deadline, no arrangement with an end date attached to it. Just me and him, choosing each other because we wanted to, not because either of us needed to. 6 months later, I stood in front of Kareen again, except this time she wasn't looking at me like something she wanted to scrape off her shoe. She told me she'd been wrong about me, that I was exactly what this family needed all along, and honestly, coming from her, that meant more than I expected it to. Elijah took my hand the same way he did that very first rainy afternoon, when I refused to get in his car because I don't get into cars with strangers. He reminded me of that, laughing, telling me who would have thought that one stubborn woman standing in the rain would end up changing his whole life. I told him good thing he wasn't a stranger for very long. Looking back now, I think about how close I came to walking away from all of it. If I had let my pride win that night at the dinner table, if I had refused to open that door when Owen showed up with the truth, I would have missed out on the realest love I've ever known, all because it started out as a lie. But sometimes the truth finds its way through, even when it takes the long way to get there. And I've learned that people aren't always defined by their worst moment. Sometimes they're defined by what they do to make it right afterward. And Elijah did that every single day until I finally believed him with my whole heart. If this story touched you the way it still touches me every time I think about it, let me know down in the comments, because I read every single one of them. Follow for more stories just like this one because trust me, there is so much more where this came from. I'll see you in the next story.